Good evening, everyone. Before we begin today's show, we want to acknowledge the national tragedy that occurred yesterday in the United States of America, when 19 children and two teachers were murdered at Robb Elementary in Uvalde, Texas, when a gunman entered the school building. And it was reported earlier today that 17 people were wounded. Many are feeling depressed, angry, and grieving all the innocent lives that were tragically lost, all valid feelings. In December of this year, it'll be an entire decade after 20 children and six school employees were killed in the 2012 Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting in Newtown, Connecticut. People all over social media shared messages of grief, anger, and a call for change to address gun violence in America. This included racing drivers and members of the racing community. And here are a few of their responses. IndyCar driver Dalton Kellett called for action on gun violence in the United States. Kellett had just finished playing with kids at an event with his teammates when he got the notification of the shooting. It definitely hit harder for him after watching those kids be kids, having a good time and not having to worry about a gunman targeting them. Then we have NASCAR driver Brandon Brown from the Xfinity Series calling for change, saying a parent should never have to worry about their child coming home from school, and a child shouldn't be afraid to go to school. And then another IndyCar driver, Santino Ferrucci, acknowledged the tragedy and shared a story. He attended school one district over from Sandy Hook and lost his former principal in the shooting that happened almost 10 years ago. And then Bubba Wallace from NASCAR said he remembered his time in elementary school not having anything to worry about and just being a kid. It broke his heart that those kids won't be able to look back on the good times of elementary school when they grew up, reflecting, or the teachers not being around to mold and shape those kids into successful adults later in their young lives. This tragedy is another reminder that we have to constantly look over our shoulder and wonder if a random gunman will ever come for us. It has brought pain and suffering to the family and friends of the victims who were killed and raised the same tough questions once again. When will enough finally be enough? How many children have to keep dying at school before the United States responds in a meaningful way? We acknowledge, and it's really hard to discuss the art of motorsports and put on our program tonight, especially after a really, really recent tragedy when a lot of people all around the country and around the world are in shock and grieving. And to all of our viewers watching around the world, Grid Network is feeling the exact same emotions as you are. We're thinking of all the families affected during this extremely difficult time and hope we finally get serious about taking steps to make sure nothing like this ever happens again in our schools. With that said, I'm Kobe Lambert from the Podium Finish, and with me, as always, my co-host Adam Limmeries. We want to encourage our viewers to participate in the chat room and share what you're feeling with us right here on Grid Tonight, your weekly motorsports news program. And certainly want to give a thank you to our Patreon supporters, Colin, Mark, Deschelle, and Robin. Thank you so much for investing in Grid Network, keeping us on the air long term. A link to our Patreon in the video description below. And now getting to our show, we have some really interesting stories to discuss tonight, and we'll start off with a little something called Project 91. In only its second year of existence, NASCAR Cup Series team Trackhouse Racing is quickly becoming a household name and an organization not afraid to try new, innovative ideas to get better connected with the motorsports community internationally. Trackhouse Entertainment Group launched a new program called Project 91, an effort to bring recognizable foreign drivers from other disciplines to NASCAR. Trackhouse plans to enter the number 91 Chevrolet Camaro in at least one race later this season, but they want to expand the program in the future with more races. They plan to announce the first international driver in race tomorrow. Yes. So by the end of this week, by the end of the day tomorrow, you'll know a lot more about which foreign driver is going to be racing with Trackhouse in the NASCAR Cup Series later this season. Team owner Justin Marks said the goal is to use the Project 91 to connect NASCAR with global motorsport culture. He thinks the next gen car can bring NASCAR into the global professional motorsport conversation where the new technology has relevance on the world stage and drivers from other disciplines won't have such a difficult time transitioning to stock cars unlike the previous generation cars. NBC Sports broadcaster Townsend Bell drove the next gen car in a simulator at Le Mans and compared the driving style to the Lexus GT3 sports car. Marks added the diffusers, independent rear suspension, the sequential gearbox, and other components on the next gen cars are used in other forms of motorsports. And the neat graphic you see right here on the screen, courtesy of Trackhouse. So, first question of the night for you, Adam. How do you see Project 91 benefiting NASCAR in front of an international audience?
Well, Colby, first of all, you did a really good job with the intro tonight, and with this announcement happening tomorrow, we could see, NASCAR go to places that we've dreamed about. We know NASCAR has raced outside of the United States in the past: Canada, Mexico, and Japan. Most notably in Japan at the legendary Suzuka circuit and the oval at Twin Ring Motegi. With this news, tomorrow, we could see NASCAR go to places across the world that we never thought could happen. For example, as many of you know, I'm the Repco Supercars Championship expert here at GRIDnet Network. How about seeing NASCAR having either a points-paying race or an exhibition race at Mount Panorama Bathurst? How cool would it be? How cool would it be to see those cars go down the Conroe Straight at over 200 miles an hour, going up Mountain Straight into Reed Park, McPhillamy Park, Skyline, or even, as our colleague Joshua Birch is over in England, how about seeing NASCAR at the legendary Silverstone circuit? Or could we see him race at the legendary Brands Hatch circuit in England? There is an oval track there in England, Rockingham Speedway. And we do have the Lausitz Ring in Germany. With this news, we could see NASCAR go to tracks we never thought we'd see. Our dreams could become reality in the not too distant future.
Well, Adam, the goal of Project 91 isn't necessarily to take NASCAR to other racetracks around the world outside of the United States, but the goal is to bring world-class international drivers from multiple disciplines such as Formula One, IndyCar, and any of the sports car racing series from around the world. So I guess eventually, if NASCAR is able to get a greater following internationally, maybe, as you were saying, all the tracks overseas that we dream about, maybe NASCAR could host an exhibition event over in a foreign country, kind of like we saw NASCAR race at Suzuka in Japan during the 1990s, which was a really popular with all of the racing fans. I think Justin Marks is has a brilliant mind for coming up with something like this. It's really exciting. As someone who covers multiple disciplines of motorsports, this is a very exciting project to me. And when I saw the news right before I got on the air that they're going to make the big announcement tomorrow, which driver from another discipline is going to be racing the NASCAR Cup Series, I think that's going to be a really fun. A lot of people are going to be anxious to see which driver it's going to be, and I have a feeling it might end up sending shockwaves across the motorsports world and probably be the most talked about thing across social media tomorrow. And I think this is also as I was talking about his comments about shortening the learning curve. In the past, it's always been so hard for a lot of drivers to transition from open wheel or sports cars to NASCAR. I mean, Tony Stewart did it successfully, and also Juan Pablo Montoya had success in NASCAR too. But some other drivers, they really struggled to catch on at the Cup level, kind of like IndyCar drivers. Sam Hornish Jr., although Sam Hornish Jr. later found a lot of success in the NASCAR Xfinity Series, but the Cup Series, it didn't really work out for him. And Dario Franchitti, he didn't even last an entire year in NASCAR because he struggled a lot, and then they ran into sponsorship issues, and that had to shut down Dario's NASCAR Cup Series program, and he also raced an Xfinity Series that year as well. And then Dario ended up coming back to IndyCar for a couple of more years before he was forced to retire after that accident in Houston. So hopefully, with the new next gen car, it's going to make it a lot easier for drivers from IndyCar, Formula One, sports cars, supercars, World Rally Championship, any of those series around the world. Hopefully, it'll make it a lot easier for them. And also, the thing that's very attractive about this, they'll be in competitive race winning equipment, and for drivers from other series who dream of racing in NASCAR, they don't really entertain the idea coming from NASCAR. Well, for one part, it's really hard to find a competitive team like Trackhouse who's willing to field an additional entry for a motorsport star from another series. And plus, when you throw sponsorship into the equation as well, that makes it hard because these drivers they don't want to run in a car that's only going to be competing for a 30th because they're not going to be able to showcase their skills. Ross Chastain and Daniel Suarez have already shown this season what Trackhouse Chevrolet Camaros are capable of doing. So for any driver outside of NASCAR internationally who wants to come over here and show us what they can do in the NASCAR Cup Series, I think this is an excellent opportunity for them to shine in stock car racing. And Trackhouse, and as I was saying, Trackhouse planning to recruit drivers with experience in Formula One, IndyCar, and sports car racing to drive the number 91 Chevrolet to bring world class driving talent into NASCAR. Yeah, and for years, drivers from major racing series have said they like to give NASCAR a try, but as I've been saying, it's super hard to find a competitive ride to truly showcase what it can do at stock car racing's highest level. Project 91 is supposed to make it easier for those international drivers dreaming of NASCAR to make that dream become a reality. And three names that immediately come to mind about potential drivers Trackhouse could be looking at: Kimmy Reichenin. He retired from Formula One, and he has plenty of time on his hands now. The Finnish racing driver made a start in the NASCAR Camping World Truck Series and the NASCAR Xfinity Series in 2011 when he took a 2-year sabbatical from Formula One. Raikkonen competed at Charlotte Motor Speedway on Memorial Day weekend in 2011, running with Kyle Busch Motorsports. He finished 15th in the truck race and 27th in Xfinity in the exact same year. Raikkonen could have made his Cup debut at Sonoma with Robbie Gordon's team, but he wrecked the car in testing, and that deal unfortunately fell through. Juan Pablo Montoya raced full time in the NASCAR Cup Series from 2007 to 2013. JPM had some good runs as a NASCAR driver. An Xfinity win in Mexico City, 2 Cup wins also on road courses, Sonoma and Watkins Glen. His best points finish in Cup was 8th in 2009. Last but not least, current McLaren Formula One driver Daniel Ricciardo. He loves NASCAR, and he previously said he'd be willing to try a stock car on a road course. We know McLaren CEO Zach Brown isn't afraid at all to make big waves in the motorsports world. And as I was telling Adam before we came on the air, this Project 91 that Trackhouse has going on, it screams Zach Brown loud. This is his type of story. He likes to make a big splash in the motorsports world, especially when you consider then McLaren driver Fernando Alonso skipping the Monaco Grand Prix to compete in the Indianapolis 500 with McLaren, Honda, and Andretti Autosport. Looking at the NASCAR and Formula One schedules, all of the remaining NASCAR road course races are happening on the same weekend as Formula One events, except for one. Watkins Glen on August 21st is taking place on an F1 off weekend. The week before the Formula One summer break ends with the trip to Spa-Francorchamps on August 28th for the Belgian Grand Prix. So theoretically, Daniel Ricciardo could race at Watkins Glen, but McLaren would have to give him the green light. Knowing Zach Brown, he wouldn't hesitate at all to allow Ricciardo to do something like this because as I said, this story is right up Brown's alley. Adam, in your opinion, which drivers would you like to see do a one-off in NASCAR Cup Series race at Trackhouse, and which driver do you think is going to ultimately end up being announced tomorrow?
Well, Colby, I, when I heard this news, I was I was blown away. I think this is really cool to see, having and having some international talent come over here and race in NASCAR. A couple of drivers I'd like to see. One, of course, Shane Van Gisbergen. You know, he's been very successful in the Repco Supercar Championship. How next year they're going to have their Gen 3 car. So it kind of reminds me of what we have now in NASCAR. Could we see SVG come over here? Um, you know, there's some, I mean, you know, for me, Daniel Ricciardo is a really good choice. You know, like you mentioned, Kobe, he loves NASCAR. So now the driver who I think will get the seat tomorrow. Wow. You know, I'm gonna go out on a limb and I'm gonna say it is a. Uh, I'm gonna say it's a former IMSA driver who has been very successful, world class driver. A lot of people may have forgotten this driver, but not me. I'm going to say former Chevrolet Corvette racer who has raced all over the world, Johnny O'Connell. Yeah, he's raced at the Rolex 24 Hours Daytona, the 12 Hours of Sebring. He's raced at Spa. He's raced all over the world. Why not? Someone unexpectedly who we'll see how we do. It would take a lot of practice, to get, used to this next gen car, but I'm going to say Johnny O'Connell out of the blue.
Yeah, that would be out of the blue if we see Johnny O'Connell running a NASCAR Cup Series car. But Adam, I'm actually thinking if I'm making a prediction now, as I was saying, this story screams Zach Brown. This is his kind of story. So that's why I think he's going to give Daniel Ricciardo the okay. We're going to see a current McLaren Formula One driver racing in the NASCAR Cup Series and a one-off at Watkins Glen. So that's my prediction there. I think it's going to be Ricciardo, but we're talking about outside the box stuff. It might be someone we haven't even mentioned tonight. It may not be a Daniel Ricciardo. It may not be a Juan Pablo Montoya coming back for one. It might not even be a Kimmy Reichenin. It might be someone really unexpected. And I know British sports car racer Nick Tandy. He loves NASCAR. He's a big time NASCAR fan. And he's also a GM factory driver now. So this could be a great opportunity for Nick Tandy to potentially make his NASCAR Cup Series debut in competitive equipment. I know he's been begging to try to make his NASCAR debut at some point in the future, but hasn't been able to make that happen. So I think Nick Tandy could potentially be a possibility. And as you said, Adam, SVG, the Holden Commodores and supercars are going to be Chevrolet Camaros in 2023, and Trackhouse has Chevrolet Camaros. So I think it would be really cool to see what Shane Van Gisbergen could do in the NASCAR Cup Series. I think that would bring a lot of attention on NASCAR and just overall to sum everything up. Justin Marks, you deserve a pat on the back for this because this really gives people all over the world an extra incentive to pay more attention to NASCAR, not just here at home, but also globally around the world.
I mean, we've seen former supercars driver Marcus Ambrose. He came over from supercars and raced over here in America. He won at Watkins Glen. So, so if you're watching this, stay tuned tomorrow morning to social media to see which driver joins Trackhouse Racing. Is it going to be a surprise or is it going to be a driver that we all know? And now switching to some IndyCar news on this Wednesday night. In an interview with motorsport.com, IndyCar driver Alexander Rossi said we'll know his plans for the 2023 season very soon. Citing legal issues, Rossi can't announce anything now, but we're expected to know which IndyCar team he'll race for next year in about 3 to 4 weeks' time. Alexander Rossi has been with Andretti Autosport since his rookie year in 2016. Will he stay or will he go? It's been rumored that he could depart Andretti Autosport and switch over to the Arrow McLaren SP team, a team that is set to expand to 3 full full-time cars next year. When we get confirmation of Andretti's new contract, we'll report right here on GRIDnet Network. And the photo you see on the screen, taken by Carl Zemlin from Penske Entertainment. Next, here's Kobe with some news about F1's most recent race, the Spanish Grand Prix from Barcelona, Spain.
And I think you meant Rossi's new contract there, Adam.
Yeah.
He accidentally said Andretti's new contract. Yeah, so you meant Rossi's there. And once again, Formula One's growth in America continues to explode. ESPN's ratings are in for the Spanish Grand Prix. It was the most viewed live Spanish Grand Prix telecast on record. They had an average of 1.1 million viewers and peaked at 1.4 million. The average race audience has increased by 32% since last year. An average of 546,000 viewers between age 18 through 49 are watching Formula One through the first six races of the 2022 season. The average number of viewers are 1.4 million people, and that is a 44% increase over last year through the same first six races. So while Formula One, it is just exploding here in the United States still, and that's a real good sign for Formula One after the fiasco at Abu Dhabi at the end of last season. Because I was afraid that was gonna hurt the viewership numbers. And I actually promised not to mention Abu Dhabi on any of our program until we get to it later this year. So sorry about that. If Formula One continues to get more popular here in the United States, do you see them passing NASCAR at some point as the most popular form of motorsport stateside?
Kobe, I do. And I think the Netflix series Drive to Survive has helped a lot with viewership here in the United States regarding Formula One. It and we saw last year at Circuit of the Americas in Austin, Texas, how many people were there for the full weekend. F1 has grown a whole lot here in the United States over the last 5 to 10 years. And if this popularity continues, yeah, I do see it passing NASCAR as the most popular form of motorsports. As we all know, next year F1's having 3 races here in the United States: Miami, Austin, and Las Vegas. I think it's bound to happen, and I think Formula One will pass NASCAR as the most popular form of motorsports here in the United States.
I totally agree with you. I think it's certainly possible that Formula One could pass NASCAR. And I know a couple of years ago, the thought that Formula One potentially been more popular than NASCAR, would be unbelievable, or you probably laugh at that thought. But Formula One is really exploding. I was really shocked when I saw the numbers from ESPN PR saying that we've seen a 44% increase in viewership, and the race was also on at 9 a.m. Early in the morning, and people typically like to, if they're not going to Sunday morning service, they like to sleep in late on Sundays because that might be one of their only 2 days to sleep in after a long week of work. So people are willing to wake up early, no matter what time these Formula One races are, whether it's 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, to watch these races. And it shows that people are dedicated here in the States and they're committed to watching Formula One. As you mentioned, we often refer to Drive to Survive as being the main reason for getting many Americans into the sport. And also, I think it comes down to name recognition in the mainstream media as well. If you ask a random person off the street, do they know what Formula One is nowadays? They'll say yes. Back when I was in high school 5, 6, 7 years ago, if I asked people about Formula One, they would actually tell me what is that. And I think if I asked those same people today, they would know exactly what Formula One is. If I asked them to name a Formula One driver, I'm pretty sure a random person on the street would be able to say, "Oh, I know Lewis Hamilton, Lando Norris, or Max Verstappen." I think a lot of people would know those guys. And no offense to Ross Chastain, he's had a really great season in NASCAR. But if I ask someone who is Ross Chastain, they're probably not going to be able to tell me who he is. And I think my colleague at the podium finish, Taylor Kitchen, said it best. NASCAR, they really need to have a star. And I think what she meant, that we need to have a star in the mainstream media. I think a lot of people really know who Bubba Wallace is for the most part. I think a lot of people know Chase Elliott, maybe Ryan Blaney as well. But But NASCAR, if they want to continue growing, I feel like they need to have stars, like Jeff Gordon, Tony Stewart, Dale Earnhardt Jr., and even Jimmy Johnson. People who are drivers who are gonna be recognized by everyone in the mainstream. And right now, I think that's where NASCAR is lacking right now, and that's where Formula One is gaining. And next, a story coming out of MotoGP. The Grand Prix of Finland won't take place this year, and it's been postponed to 2023. They cited circumstances that created delays and put the ongoing work at the new circuit at risk. Plus, the ongoing geopolitical situation in the region poses a major concern. Finland, along with Sweden, recently filed their applications to join the NATO military defensive alliance, which angered Russia, who has threatened to respond militarily over the move. With the ongoing war in Ukraine and the threat that Russia may retaliate in the future against Finland for their plans to join NATO, MotoGP feels that it's best to step away from the situation this year, and we all hope calmer heads will eventually prevail. Next, here's Matt White with a grid history update.
Here it's that time again where we take a whiz around the world of motorsport to bring you up to date with some of the results that you may have missed on what was yet another busy weekend. We'll start in Japan at Autopolis, where Super Formula had their fourth round of the season on Sunday. Ryo Hirakawa getting the victory in that race. At Barcelona for the Spanish Grand Prix, Max Verstappen, the winner of the Grand Prix, putting himself back into the championship fight. Talking of championship contenders, Jamie Chadwick again winning in the W Series, Felipe Drugovich winning both Formula 2 races over the weekend. David Vidale's got a Formula 3 win on home soil, and Victor Martins, the now championship leader, was the other winner in Formula 3. At Donington, British Superbikes were in action over the weekend. Kyle Ryde winning on Saturday before Jason O'Halloran took over to win both races on Sunday, so a clean sweep for Yamaha, split across two of their front-running teams there. There was World Superbike action on the weekend as well in Portugal. They were at Estoril. Alvaro Bautista won the Saturday race on the run to the line over champion Toprak Razgatlioglu, and Jonathan Ray winning both the Superpole and the main races on Sunday. DTM were back in action. They were in Germany for the first time this year at the Lausitz Ring, and 2 wins for BMW and Sheldon van der Linde getting both of those. And at Texas on Friday, Stuart Friesen won in the Truck Series, and Tyler Reddick, the Cup star, going down and winning in Xfinity. We won't mention the Sunday race. The less said about that one, the better. This weekend, even more action coming. It is a massive weekend, Memorial Weekend. Monaco Grand Prix, supported by F2. We've got the Coke 600 on Sunday night, and of course the Indy 500 on Sunday afternoon. And on grid_history on Twitter today, we've had our look back at the 1996 Indy 500, of course, won by Buddy Lazier. Also some big action over the weekend as well from Australia, where the Speed Series is at Eastern Creek. So TCR, S5000 and various other things under lights as well on Saturday night. So that's going to be a spectacle. Be bringing you all of those news and notes on next week's Grid Tonight. But for now, it's back to the guys.
Thanks, Matt. Last Sunday, we saw history occur at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Scott Dixon won his 5th career Indy 500 pole and scored the fastest 4-lap average speed for a pole sitter in Indy 500 history at 234.046 miles per hour, breaking a record that has lasted since 1996. As Matt mentioned, when Scott Braden had a 233.718 miles per hour 4-lap average for the pole. However, Ari Leyendijk's fastest ever 4-lap average period of 236.986 miles per hour in a qualifying session, also set in 1996, still stands on the photo you see right here on the screen of Chip Ganassi and Scott Dixon, taken by Chris Owens from Penske Entertainment. Adam, thinking back to the incredible speeds we saw at Indy during that time period, and I know I wasn't born then, so I wasn't around to see Scott Braden and Ari Leyendijk in 1996. Was born in 1999. So thinking back to all of those incredible speeds, I'm sure you were paying attention to that as well. How impressive was Dixon's pole run?
Oh, Kobe, it was impressive. It was, the speeds this year that we've seen during practice and now qualifying for the Indy 500 have been impressive. Um, you know, if you watch Monday's Grid Live Encore show, I said in the comment section, I think a Ganassi car will win the Indy 500. So that gives you a little hint about who I'm picking for pick a winner this weekend. Scott Dixon's run was incredible. And when he finished off 4 laps, his family went absolutely crazy, and I don't blame him. This year we could see one of the greatest Indianapolis 500s of all time. There's so many storylines going into this race, but Scott Dixon's 4-lap average blew me away. And yeah, I remember when Scott Brayton did that 4-lap average, and Arie Luyendyk in 1996. We haven't seen anything like that since then. Scott Dixon's 4 laps was incredible, awesome, and you better find a way to watch this year's Indy 500 because it could be one of the greatest Indy 500s that we've seen in a long, long time.
I have a feeling we say that every single year, Adam, because I remember last year we were saying the 2021 Indy 500 would be one of the greatest Indy 500s of all time. And in my opinion, it really was one of the most exciting Indy 500s I've seen during my lifetime. And hopefully this year will be much better. And you mentioned Scott Dixon's family been extremely excited over his pole run. I actually think his wife Emma was more excited about winning the pole than he was because she was jumping with joy, and she was so excited when he was driving down the pit lane before he got out of the car to celebrate with her and the rest of the team. And it just goes to show racing is a family affair. It's a family sport, and because your family right there with you every step of the way from the very first race to the very last one of your career. And while I wasn't around during the time when Arie Luyendyk and Scott Brayton were setting records at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, it's really nice to see the speeds way up there, matching 1996. And when IndyCar switches to the new engine formula in just a couple of years' time, maybe just maybe the cars will be fast enough to challenge Arie Luyendyk's all-time record for the greatest 4-lap average speed in the history of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. So a job well done for Scott Dixon. And now get ready for Carb Day and on to the race itself. And as we've been talking about the last couple of weeks, Chip Ganassi Racing, it looks like everything's going to have to go through them, especially with them dominating qualifying, putting 4 of their 5 Hondas in the Firestone Fast 6. Jimmy Johnson made the top 12. Some drivers in really good cars are going to be starting deep in the field outside the top 20, like last year's winner, Elio Castroneves, Colton Herta, and Scott McLaughlin, just to name a few. Taking an early look at the weather forecast for the race, it's supposed to be partly cloudy with temperatures in the high 70s to low 80s. Knowing the Indy cars in this current configuration, passing is usually more difficult when it's warmer, and the slingshot really comes into effect when we have cooler track conditions. For the drivers I mentioned starting deep in the field, could a poor qualifying ever mean they're unlikely to win the Indy 500, especially if it's going to be harder to move to the front with potentially warmer temperatures?
Yeah. You know, if you watched our coverage of practice last week, one of the things that we talked about is could Helio Castroneves be the only driver to win 5 Indy 500s? I don't think that's going to happen this year since he's starting deep in the field. I think it is going to be, you mentioned the weather, Kobe, and I'm happy to see that it'll be really nice weather for the fans that will be there this year for the Indy 500. And for the first time in a couple of years, there are no restrictions. So that means Indianapolis 500 on Sunday, you could see a quarter to 500,000 people at that track for the greatest spectacle in racing. We haven't seen that in a couple of years because of the pandemic. I think it's going to be, to me, if you're starting it at least in the at least in the top 12, you have a shot to capture the Borg Warner Trophy and have your face on there. I don't, to me, and if you're starting in the back, I think pit stops are going to be really crucial in order for you to potentially have a shot to win. But I think if you're starting inside the top 12, you have a shot to win. Then we have a comment from Humperdinck. He says, I was super impressed with the speedster in qualifying. I was sleeping on Scott Dixon, and you could never sleep on Scott Dixon. That is absolutely right, Humperdinck. And thank you for the comment. Never count out that Kiwi, Scott Dixon. He's up there when you least expect it. So, could the Pulsator win the Indy 500 on Sunday? It could just happen.
Yeah, and as I've been saying, you could really pick any of the 5 Ganassi Hondas as potential winners for the Indy 500. I think it would be a major shock at this point if any team outside of Chip Ganassi Racing ends up winning this race, because those Ganassi Hondas, all 5 of them, they're just on point. They have the setup perfect on all 5 of those cars, and they're just doing some amazing things at the Speedway in the month of May. And getting back to the question itself, could someone deep in the field after a poor qualifying effort mean it's unlikely that they're going to win the race? I don't think it's impossible for anyone starting deep in Indy 500 to go to victory lane, but I think they'll need a few things working out in their favor, like a caution coming out in the middle of pit strategy and they haven't pitted yet, or they've already pitted and somehow stays on the lead lap and everybody else needs to come pit. I think that would go a really long way. Or if we see several incidents on attrition starting to pile up, that could also give them a chance to really get into the fight. But I think we could see an exciting Indy 500 on our hand, because there's a lot of really good cars that are starting a lot further back, and they'll definitely be working really hard to make their way towards the front. I have a feeling we're going to see some comers and goers in this year's Indianapolis 500-mile race.
And let our viewers know, our colleague Joshua Birch will be doing a watch along on his YouTube channel for the Indy 500 this Sunday, along with Monaco Grand Prix. So be sure to subscribe to Josh's channel, as he'll have coverage of 2 of the biggest races in the world of motorsports. And now, switching over to some NASCAR Xfinity news to wrap up this Wednesday. IMSA Michelin pilot driver Mason Felipe will make his NASCAR Xfinity Series debut on June 4th at Portland International Raceway in Oregon. Felipe will drive the number 91 DGM Racing Chevrolet with sponsorship from Open Fender, Performance Funding, and MotorizedShades.com. He currently races full-time with Brian Herta Autosport, driving a Hyundai in the IMSA Michelin Pilot Challenge TCR class. Also, Felipe has had past success at Portland, scoring a race win, a pole, and a 3rd place finish. And Grid Network plans to be at Portland International Raceway to coverage this year's Xfinity race. So stay tuned for further updates and the graphics you've seen on the screen, courtesy of DGM Racing. And now I'll flip it over to my colleague Kobe Lambeth as he wraps up this edition of Grid Tonight.
Yeah, another edition of Grid Tonight in the books. And please be sure to like and subscribe to Grid Network here on YouTube. You can follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. We encourage you to take 5 minutes after our show and consider joining our Patreon. Invest in Grid Network to keep us on the air well into the future. Do you want to buy coffee? Click the link in the video description below, and you can buy a drink for your favorite on-air talent here at Grid Network. Big thank you to Edward Hunter from Formula Zone, Amber and Zachary for buying us a coffee. Greatly appreciate it. Any amount will continue to help us grow our motorsports media outlet. Visit public.com, also known as the stock market social media home. The link below in referral code GRIDnet will give you $5 to invest immediately. Public.com allows you to connect with your friends. You can make new friends and use tools to learn how to properly invest in the stock market. And looking at our schedule for the week, Thursday, check out a new episode of Women in Motorsports. And then Saturday, we have a special Grid Live doubleheader, a special pre-race show to get you ready for the 106th running of the Indianapolis 500. And then our regular show with the two other crown jewel races on this great Memorial Day weekend coming up, the Monaco Grand Prix Formula One and NASCAR's Coca-Cola 600. However, we're not going to have any programming on Sunday, but we'll have another doubleheader on Monday with Grid Live wrap-up in the afternoon and Grid Live Encore in the evening with Ben Snyder and Brandon Crossland. For Adam Limroos, I'm Kobe Lambert from the Podium Finish. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Don't be an anonymous investor. Join the stock market social media platform, public.com. Invest any amount of money and share with friends and new friends. Discover new opportunities, such as new companies and potential business partners, and useful tools for beginners, and share your experience with friends on public.com. Link in the video description gets you $5 for being a Grid Network viewer. Use the referral code GRIDnet for your free $5 to invest and start investing and networking on public.com.